All right, looks like everybody's in, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So hi, everybody. My name's Corey. I'm one of the lead organizers of Rochester Riders, and tonight we have Mr. Coulter on, Executive Coulter from Oakland County, and we're going to be having a little town hall session. So we have a short presentation to give about who Rochester Riders is and what we are, what we're working for. And then we're going to open it up to Mr. Coulter and a question and answer session for both our group and for him. So Tom, if you're ready to start, I'll go ahead and hand the mic over to you and we can start our short presentation.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tom Yesbeck. I'm another one of the lead organizers at Rochester Riders. And we are assembled here at 6:05 p.m. To talk about public transit. So, Corey, if you want to flip to the next slide on this slideshow. So Rochester Riders is a pretty simple goal. We're a group of citizens in the Rochester Hills area, and some people further afield as well who support us. And our goal is to bring fixed route bus service to Rochester Hills. We started in May 2020. And basically our goal, as you can see on the map here, that we have, this is a map of SMARTS, which is the public transit system in Metro Detroit. You can see where all the routes are. There's that big red square, that's Rochester and Rochester Hills. They opt out of SMART. That smaller map shows which cities opt in and which opt out. And what we really want to do is to fill that big red box in with transit routes like our neighboring cities. And Corey, if you want to click to show that little round circle is where downtown Rochester is located. As you can see, there's no transit routes that get you anywhere close to there. There are two locations. That's Troy Beaumont. The other one is Oakland University. Those are two locations which are in maybe walking, definitely biking distance of some neighborhoods in Rochester Hills. But for all intents and purposes, if you don't have a car in this part of Oakland County, you are at a significant disadvantage. If you want to flip to the next, and we also, another one of our goals as well relating to that is we want to improve active transportation too, because that also helps give more transportation alternatives. So this is a map kind of showing that car ownership is not universal. So we have parts of this Rochester Hills where people live without a vehicle. There are people living with a disability, and there's people where over 20% or more people are people age 65 and over are living in poverty, and some of these areas overlap. So we definitely have need for more transportation options in our communities, and this is not unique to Rochester Hills. Next slide. Now, for those of you who don't know, this situation wasn't always the case. Back for 30 years, the DUR, Detroit United Railway electric streetcars, connected the city of Rochester to neighboring communities. After that, private bus lines were amalgamated into SEMTA, and SEMTA is the predecessor to modern day SMART. And when shortly after it was reorganized into SMART, that's when Rochester Hills, and a number of other communities across Metro Detroit decided to opt out. Next slide. So in addition to giving people more options to move around who might otherwise have limited mobility, adopting public transit is really good for the environment. And the Oakland County has been making some strides to be more environmentally sustainable, and public transit is one way to do that. So as you can see by this amazing picture, one bus can take up to 60 cars transporting one person off the road. That's pretty significant. And you know, if you've ever been stuck in traffic, you know what that's like. We want to reduce, reducing carbon emissions means reducing vehicle miles traveled, and public transportation is emits 95% less carbon monoxide and 50% less carbon dioxide per passenger per mile, and has increased fuel efficiency compared to cars. Next slide. So our call to people, how you can help us achieve these goals. So we need people to become members of our organization. We encourage people to attend our meetings, join our mailing list, and try and volunteer their time and spread the word about what we're doing. Sign our petition. We'll provide the link to that during this meeting. And tell your family, friends, and neighbors, and also write to your leaders. So city and county leadership, people, you know, anyone that has some degree of influence in your community, you know, you have to let them know how important public transit is. So those are all things that we can do to help push this movement forward. So now open it back up to Corey.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So that's a little short overview of what our group is and what we're pushing for. And then before we get into our Q&A session, I wanted to hand it over to Mr. Coulter. I believe he had a few words he wanted to say to the group. So go right ahead.
Yeah, it is great to be here. I'm trying to figure out how I can see the active speaker, but maybe I'll just keep going. Anyway, if you can see me okay, Corey, you see me okay? I'm on the on my back deck here in Ferndale, enjoying this beautiful evening, and really thrilled to be with all of you tonight. I feel like I'm with allies tonight. You know, I was mayor. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the county executive. I've been the county executive for almost 2 years now. For 9 years before that, I was the mayor of Ferndale. And then for 8 years before that, I was an Oakland County commissioner representing Ferndale and Hazel Park and Royal Oak. So I've been in elective office for a while now. And in my very first campaign for county commissioner in 2002, I had 3 issues. And one of those 3 was bringing mass transit to Metro Detroit. So here we are 19 years later, and we've had a few more plans and a few more fits and starts, but we have yet to substantially move the ball down the field in any major way. And so I say all that to say, A, it's a passion of mine, and it has been for a long time, not just because I like transit, although I do, but because I understand how important transit is to the people of this region and to our economic success, for good paying jobs and the like, for our economic well-being. It's critical. We know that communities and regions that invest in transit do better economically and do better for their people. We did a survey as we were putting some data together for my State of the County address last year. And we measured the top 10 regions in the country by investment in transit. And as a group, as a percentage, their population grew by almost 20%. In Metro Detroit, our population was basically flat, and frankly, it would have gone down if it hadn't been for the immigrant community that had moved here. I believe there's a direct corollary to that. I believe that our success as a county and as a region is directly tied to transit. So, for all the reasons that we all know, also the sustainability issues, which you know, but I think I love the fact that this is the Rochester group, because it's easy for the mayor of Ferndale, who has Woodward Avenue split right through the middle of town and connecting Detroit to Pontiac. It's easy to advocate for transit if you're from Ferndale. It is a little bit more challenging, I suppose. Some of the pushback is different in Rochester than it would be down in my neck of the woods, but I think the arguments are essentially the same. If you care about the planet, if you care about good jobs, if you care about retaining young people in this region. I loved the point that you made that not everybody wants a car. And that's kind of a change in the last 20 years. And I think we need to accommodate young people who don't want to own that, but want to use public transportation. So for all the reasons that I've been passionate about for 19 years, I'm a transit advocate. The difference now is I'm in a position to really get to be able to do something about it. And I'm really excited about that, because I think, for those of you who know the history, and that was a great history, by the way, a brief history of the transit in our region, but you understand that Oakland County has often been an impediment to greater transit options for our residents and for the residents of the region. Brooks Patterson, my predecessor, was not a huge fan of it. By the end of his service, he was kind of less publicly vocal and neutral, but really never championed the cause like a lot of us would have liked him to do. So now that I am here and I have the opportunity to help lead Oakland County, the first thing I want you to know is that you have a champion as your county executive for transit. And as some of you may know, we took a shot at it last year, right before COVID. It's one of the first things I got to work on as county executive. And what we tried to do is go to Lansing and modify the RTA language, the Regional Transit Authority language, because it was clear that Macomb County wasn't going to want to participate, and we thought that would be a hindrance to us moving forward. Turns out that Washtenaw County did want to participate, so that still left us with 3 counties in the city of Detroit. But we had to go to the legislature to make some changes, and we don't have a very friendly legislature right now. It's a very conservative legislature. It's not particularly pro-transit, and at the end of the day, we were not successful. So, and then COVID hit. And I know COVID has been horrible in a lot of ways. It has shaken our lives in a lot of ways, and it's put a lot of things on hold. You know, a lot of things have taken a backseat to COVID. But I want you to know a couple of things. We have not been neglecting our interest in transit and transportation during COVID. And I want to talk a little bit more, just briefly about that. And I actually think at the end of the day, and maybe this is just because I'm an optimist at heart, I think COVID gave us an opportunity to reevaluate. We have to pause now. You know, we were going to have a plan on the ballot last November. I'm not sure during the middle of a global pandemic if that would have, in the final analysis, been the best time to do a transit proposal on the ballot. But now we have an opportunity to regroup, to think about the impediments that have kept us from getting a transit plan moved forward, and to incorporate the things that we've learned from COVID and how we need to move forward. So I just think we have a real opportunity. So just so you know, I don't think first of all, if somebody wants to tell you that they're serious about something, they need to put their money where their mouth is. And so one of the things that we did that Oakland County never had is we created the position of a transit planner. We've hired someone now, and I think we've hired someone who's one of the leading experts in Southeast Michigan, frankly, on this issue of transit. And many of you are probably familiar with the name of Neil Greenberg, but Neil is on this call. And I want you to know that he's here. I want you to know that he is now working on behalf of Oakland County government to help us craft a plan for the region and our own county that can advance our interests here. Okay, trying to, I'm sorry, I was looking at the comments and somebody said I'm on my soapbox, but sorry, if you know me, I get on this soapbox. I'm passionate about transit. So let me tell you, and I know this is a Q&A, I know this is a Q&A session, but I want to say this. The effort that we made a couple of years ago to go to Lansing, it was well-meaning. It was led primarily by others in the region. The plan itself wasn't a whole lot different than the plan that was on the ballot in 2018 that narrowly failed in Oakland County. So it was more of a structural thing. And one of the criticisms we got was, but what's the plan? What's the revised plan? And we said, well, we can't really create the plan until we have a governing structure that works. So we're going to take this a different tact this time. We're working on this, and I work with Neil on this all the time, and he's working with all of our stakeholders. So he's very important in this process. So if you don't know Neil, get to know Neil. But we have to solve a couple of problems. Number one, the plan itself had problems that we didn't, I think, sufficiently address. And I think a couple of them bear mentioning before, and then we'll open it up to Q&A because I could talk all night. But a couple of them bear mentioning, especially one that I think will be particularly interesting for the Rochester area folks. And that is this. Oakland County, because of its opt-out system, has taken a Swiss cheese approach to transit that frankly doesn't work. You know, we can talk about Macomb and their unwillingness to move forward with a transit plan, but when it comes to opt-in, opt-out, they're an entire opt-in county, and that's been to their benefit. And I think that we have to get to a place where most, if not all, of our communities are opted in some way. We got to be in this together. Swiss cheese doesn't work. I said this when I was on the county commission. You know, we used to complain a little bit in the south end of the county about the Oakland County Parks and Rec millage because there weren't a lot of parks, Oakland County parks in the south end. Oh, and all the Republicans would complain, no, you know, the parks are great. We said, well, all right, well, let us opt out of the parks millage. You know, if since we don't have the access to the parks down in the south, well, no, it's got to be a county program. Yeah, okay, well, so does transit. So I believe that we have to figure out a way to get more, if not all, of our local communities opted in to our existing transit service. But number two, we have to strengthen our existing transit service because SMART and the bus transportation is still going to be the backbone of any other transit system that you put together. If you don't have routes with good, efficient, timely, cost-effective transit that people want to take to get you to perhaps other transit lines, the system isn't going to work. So we have to focus on SMART. We have to get more resources for SMART. We have to make coverage for SMART broader, and we have to increase the number of times that buses go in a row. We have to. I use the example of FAST. You know, a lot of people said, "Oh, people don't take buses anymore," but FAST, they did something really smart. It's the service happens more often. It's every 15 minutes instead of every 45 minutes. It's clean, it's efficient, it has Wi-Fi, it's economical, and the ridership on the Woodward corridor increased 100% in a year and a half because of FAST. So what that tells me is if you build a good system, the bones of a great public transit system, people will take it. And that we're not going to get to a mass transit system until we have the bones of a strong public transportation system. And I think we can get there. So that's what we're working on. That's what Neil is helping me and others in this region. You know, Neil has worked at DDOT. He's worked at SMART. Now he's working for Oakland County full-time, thinking about how we can move this plan forward. And I'm so excited to have him because we've got to do this well. And so with that, Corey, I like I said, I could keep talking, but I know you want this to be a Q&A, and you got a lot of great folks on the call. So let's have a conversation if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We appreciate the passion. We're glad to have you on board with us. It's really exciting to see that our county leadership is so willing and excited to make this happen. So yeah, so thank you. And we are going to move into Q&A. So what we're going to do is if you have a question for either us or for Mr. Coulter, we're just going to ask you to type your question into the chat, and then we'll go through and then we'll keep them in order, and we'll announce your name and say, if you want to read your question, you can go ahead. We do have some that were pre-submitted. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Richard Seeger. You had a question for Mr. Coulter, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Yes, Mr. Coulter. I was curious to know, how often do you personally use public transit?
Not nearly enough, because, and Neil will prove that this is wrong, but trying to get from Ferndale up to Waterford with a schedule that I have it's just not conducive. But I will tell you, some of my favorite cities in the world, for instance, New York City is my favorite city, one of my very favorite cities in the world, and I always take the subways there. I always take transit there. DC, I love taking transit, but frankly, it's not easy enough or convenient enough in Metro Detroit. But I want to take it. I don't know that we'll get a system done in my lifetime. So more of this is more of a dream for me to the younger people. But that's the honest answer.
All right, and then Tom, I believe you had a question of your own as well.
Yes. So I was just kind of curious, what is the likelihood then, hopefully this isn't too, hopefully this isn't too much of a big question, but so in terms of Oakland County's plan, what is the likelihood that there might be a vote for the county to go all in on SMART next year? Is that in the pipeline?
It is certainly actively being considered. I don't know what the probability would be. I'll tell you, I will say this, I said this even when we were working on the plan a year and a half ago. It's more important to me that we get the plan right than how fast we get it on the ballot. Because we've taken a lot of bites at this apple in this region over the last 25 to 30 years. And we have not had a success at the ballot. In fact, it failed in Oakland County in 2018, not by much, and you can argue why that is. But I think whether it's next year or the year after, I mean, we're not talking about in the distant future. I'm certainly committed to doing it in my term as Oakland County executive. And now that I'm sitting in this job and I have an opportunity to put a plan forward before the people, I'm committed to doing that, but it's got to be the right plan, and it's got to be a plan that addresses some of the shortfalls of the last plans, two of which, as I mentioned, the opt-out and the strengthening of SMART and DDOT, frankly. So if we can get that right, if we can figure out how to strengthen our bus service and get all of our communities in, and it takes 6 months or 12 months, or 18 months. I'm okay with that as long as we can get consensus in this region on how to move forward. But I will say this, I don't give 100% guarantees, but I pretty much 99.9% guarantee that in my term as county executive, we'll put a plan on the ballot before the voters, and it'll be the best plan that we can assemble.
All right, and then we have one last question that was pre-submitted, and I'll get to the people who have their hands up. Kelly, if you wanted to go ahead and ask your question.
Of course. I wanted to add a question about the land use side of the equation, how that affects transportation. So suburban sprawl makes it very hard to provide services, including transportation, and that strains the budgets of local communities.
Yes.
Mr. Coulter, in the past, you've expressed the desire to promote denser growth in the parts of Oakland County that are already developed. So what steps is your administration taking to promote infill development and make it friendly for walking, biking, and public transportation? And on the other side of the coin, what's your administration doing to protect the shrinking amount of farmland and natural area of Oakland County?
Yeah, that's a great couple of questions, Kelly. I really appreciate them. In Ferndale, as you know, we were very proactive about alternate forms of transportation, bike lanes, pedestrian, that our street, we adopted a complete streets philosophy that our roads are for everybody and not just for cars. So I think it starts with that. And we've formally done that as a road commission in Oakland County, but we need to be more aggressive about complete streets philosophy, if you will, in all of our county roads. And the county roads are the ones that I have some influence on. The other ones are local roads, but in county roads, we need to continue to lean in on that. And one of those things is development and transit-oriented development. And that is dense development around transit routes. And we know that that's not only does that do developers sort of gravitate to transit routes and increase economic development and housing opportunities for people. But we know that that's an important part of making transit work. One of the things, and you can say what you want about the Q line in Detroit, and I have a hard time looking at that as a real transit project. It's a little bit more of a boutique project. But here's one thing it did. It has created transit-oriented development along the Woodward corridor. And I've seen the statistics on this, but you can see it just by driving down Woodward. That is incredible. The density of housing and retail and commercial along the Woodward corridor from downtown to Midtown has been incredible. And I think that the Q line has helped to do that. So first of all, transit will help us create that kind of density. And the other thing, the other part of that equation, and this is what I used to fight about when I was on the commission, when I was in Ferndale, and I said, look, we're already built out. We need investment in our older communities, not just reinvesting 5 miles up the road and then another 10 miles up the road and eliminating all the farmland and the open spaces. But Oakland County has had a history of not only just being pro sprawl, which Brooks Patterson certainly was, but they subsidized that sprawl. And so the first thing we have to do is say, if you're going to, I mean, this is the United States and people can buy property and they can develop it. But what we shouldn't do as a government is subsidize those decisions. And what gets me is that people like in cities like Rochester and Ferndale and Southfield and Pontiac are actually subsidizing with their county dollars when the county gives tax abatements or other financial incentives for people to develop. So that has to stop, so that the developers are paying the true cost of that development. And I think that's one of the tools that slows development, but also to steer development where you want it to be, and that's around the transit routes. The second part of your question is more complicated because, and that's around land use in terms of protecting open spaces, which I certainly am a fan of. The county government has limited ability to do that because, and I know this as a mayor, land use, zoning and the like is a local community responsibility. So the county doesn't have direct land use and zoning responsibility. Mostly the strategy that Oakland County has taken in the past with some success is purchasing land to put it into the park system. And as a result, we've gone from having no parks when Gwen Markham's dad was the first county executive to now having a plethora of lots of beautiful parks. So we can incorporate open lands that way, but otherwise it really has to be a combination of working with the local communities to protect that space. I hope that answers your question, Kelly.
All right, thank you for the response. We're going to move to our audience questions now. So Stephen, I believe you had your hand raised first. Go ahead and ask your question if you want to unmute.
So, Mr. Coulter,
Yes.
I am a Southeast Macomb County resident who was following
Southeast
the news.
Macomb County. Okay, what community? Because I grew up in
East
St. Clair
Point.
Shores. Oh, I grew up in St. Clair Shores, so
Yeah,
I know it well. Yeah.
so I've been following RTA news as I've been writing for 10 years, and getting on the bus has changed my life. So basically, I've been following all the news about it closely. I was honestly disappointed when I first saw the news about trying to get Macomb out of the RTA. I can understand it from your perspective because my county has basically been holding y'all back, but I also don't. It's a mix of that, but not wanting to get left behind.
Yep.
That was the soapbox that I had mentioned in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. I love it. I love that question, and I want to address it specifically because I think that Macomb County should be part of the RTA. I think that Macomb County should be pro-transit. I think that it would help people like you and all people all across Macomb County. I was born and raised there, and I would advocate for that. But here's the reality. Any plan that we do for transit has to be put on the ballot by the Board of Commissioners for the county. And so I had some very heart-to-heart conversations with leadership, political leadership in Macomb County, including the county executive, but also people on the board. And by the way, Macomb now has a Republican Board of Commissioners who said,
Yep.
We're not in favor. We're not going to do this. We like smart. We like our smart system. we're out. And so it wasn't that we wanted to give Macomb a way out. It's that we couldn't move forward until we could carve them out. But here's what I told Mark Hackle, and I'll be honest with you. And here's what all the leaders were. I sat down at dinner with Mark Hackle, Mike Duggan, Warren Evans, and myself. And we had this conversation. And here's what we said to Mark Hackle. Okay, I believe that someday you're going to want to opt into this system. So you know what we'll do? We're going to call this phase 1. And phase 1 is not going to include Macomb. And we're not going to yell at you, and we're not going to call you bad names, and you're going to call you anti-transit or head in the sand or whatever. We'll just say Macomb doesn't want to do this right now. We're going to move ahead with phase 1. But I'm telling you, we will welcome you with open arms for phase 2, because your residents and your businesses are going to see the development happen. They're going to see the economic opportunities. They're going to see how this helps people's lives, and they're going to change their mind. And when they do, we're going to welcome you in and say, you're welcome to be part of phase 2 of public transit. So it's not that, it's not that we wanted to make Mark's and Macomb's life easier in terms of getting out, but they just made it clear that they were not in a political position to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Continuing on, you said something about having Oakland County be completely opt-in.
Yes.
And that is something I am cautiously excited about. Have you, in the 2018 millage renewal, I looked at all the numbers.
Yeah.
Oakland and Wayne County, every single precinct that was opt-in had more yes votes than no in Oakland and Wayne. In Macomb County, on the other hand, out of the 154,961 people that voted, public transit only passed by 39.
Yes.
And I'm fearful of what those numbers mean for next year, too.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what the county executive there told me. He said, one of the reasons Macomb isn't going to go forward with a transit plan right now is because we barely passed SMART. And I'm worried about SMART passing the next time. So that's partly why I say we have to strengthen the services of SMART. We have to do a better job of what we currently have. And that includes making people in Macomb County and Oakland County, including the opt-out communities in Oakland County, understand the value of SMART by strengthening the services that it provides. Because it's going to, like I said, it's going to be the backbone of any kind of transit system anyway. So you raise a great point. It almost failed. And I got some thoughts about how to help make sure that it doesn't fail in Macomb. And one of the things that I would like to see, frankly, I'll just share with you, is a longer millage. Right now, that millage is only 4 years. It's not enough time to do the adequate kind of planning and investment that a transit system needs to do. So if we could figure out a way to lengthen that and increase the investment in that system, I think that would go a long way. Yeah.
One more thing about the all-in, I don't want to see empty opt-in areas like North Macomb. There are some places in Macomb County that are so far away from a fixed route, you can't even get a connector to them. Because of their 10-mile limit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep seeing that in Macomb, and I don't want to see it in Oakland either.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. By the way, I just have to respond to something my friend Meg Owen said in the chat, because I love this. She said, there wasn't really a yes campaign for SMART last time. And there wasn't even a great campaign, in my humble opinion, around the last transit plan in 2018. So Megan, thank you for bringing that up, because one of the things we have to get a lot smarter about is how we run a campaign. And guess what? I've run a few campaigns, and I've done it in an area where nobody knew me, and I was this openly gay man, and they didn't know who the hell I was, and I kind of came out of the blue, and I knew how to run a campaign, and I've been winning campaigns since 2002. I don't like the campaigns that we've run on either the SMART or the public transit millages, frankly. One of the problems is, well, we haven't invested enough in the campaigns. There has to have money. But the other thing is, when I looked at the campaign for the last transit proposal in 2018, it was all about routes and data and times. And let me tell you, we've looked at, and I think Neil will agree with this, we've looked at the campaigns that were successful in other parts of the county, other parts of the country. You talk about values. You talk to grandparents about keeping your grandchildren in the region with transit that helps them get to work. You talk about the environment and protecting our planet by getting carbon monoxide out of and those are the things that sell people, even for people that don't use transit. I think there's a lot of people in this region that would vote for transit if they understood the global value to them, even if they're not going to use it themselves. But because we talked about routes and timing, people went, I'm not sure I would use that. So I just think we have to be a lot smarter working with, marketing firms that know how to do this well, and sell a campaign much better. And that's another reason why I say it's more important that we have all these pieces in place than when we do it. We have to be ready. We have to hit the ground with our best shot at this next time. So Meg, sorry to grab a question out of the chat, but I just wanted to respond to that because I think it's a really good point.
All right.
Before my time is up, I just want to say that I think it'd be cool to have a bus ride with you one day.
I'd love to.
I'll actually echo it since on Rochester Riders' behalf. Hopefully sometime after the pandemic's a little bit less of a concern, we would love to be able to take Oakland County leadership on a ride to show them. I'm sure that some of them already know, but just to show them and our local city leaders how the system works, how transit works here, and why we want it to be brought to our area. We'd love to do that.
Well, yeah. I would love to do that, number one. Number two, I said that I find it too difficult to get to work and back because it's not the greatest system. But Neil, who I've mentioned to you a couple of times now, he does take the bus every day up to our complex. So I'm just saying, I was too big of a wimp to try to figure it out, but Neil figures it out every day. So I'd love to jump on the bus with you guys. Neil, if you jump along with us, because he knows these routes better than anyone I've ever met. And let's do that. We'll set that up. Neil, let's make that happen when it's appropriate to do so.
All right, sounds great. So our next people for questions are going to be Dr. Gould and then Miss Annis. So Dr. Gould, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Corey. Thanks to Corey and Tom for hosting this. This is great. And thank you, Mr. Coulter, for coming. Mr. Coulter and everybody, I'm Doug Gould. I'm just turned in my signatures for Rochester City Council. They were accepted. So I'm running for Rochester City Council. I failed in that attempt in 2019, but I'm going to give it another go. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. My daughter, who's about to turn 18, is special needs, and she works a fair bit from my home. She has no way she's going to be able to get to work here pretty soon. I need public transportation in the city of Rochester. So you definitely have a friend in that area. My question is because I'm guessing I'm going to be getting into some conversations about this, what is the reasoning that folks are using to opt out? I mean, what is the justification to opt out for a place like the city of Rochester, other than the ones I suspect? What are the ones they're putting on paper?
Well, I suspect, Doug, and I'm so proud of you for running for office and being a pro-transit person running in that community would be very helpful. I suspect you're going to find out pretty soon what the anti-transit people are going to say. Not enough people will use it. It's too expensive. I mean, you know Rochester better than I do. And I see some people like Melanie Hartman and Barb Annis who have actually run for office in that community before. So one of the things I might suggest to you is to reach out to them and talk and listen to how they talked about it, because they heard the pushback very directly. But I've heard it as well, and it's typically around those things. We won't use it. It's too expensive. It's not important enough. You know, the car companies aren't in favor of it. That's a myth that I wish we could just kill once and for all. The automobile companies are in favor of transit for the same reason that other companies are, because they want their employees to be able to get to work. And we are falling behind when we don't give our workers every option they have. And so it's not the auto companies, believe me, it is. I'll just, be quite frank about it. It's been the more conservative communities, the Republicans in the legislature, and that it's been it's turned into a political problem. But the other thing I would say to you is I wouldn't get in the weeds about debating them about why they don't. I think the more important thing is to have the discussion about what's so critical about it. You can start by talking about our seniors and our people with disabilities or people that of low income that don't have cars, but it's broader than that. It really is. If you talk to major businesses, there was a reason that Beaumont Hospital and some of the largest employers in Oakland County were supportive of our campaign in 2018. They understand the need from an economic perspective to have our region compete with other regions in the country. When I talk to grandparents, I say, we're spending all this money to educate your grandchildren, sending them to the best schools, great universities, and then they're taking that investment and they're moving to Chicago or LA or New York, and we're losing all the money that we invested in them for all those years. And transit isn't the only reason they're leaving, but it's one reason. They want different mobility options, and we're not providing it for them.
Makes sense. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for running.
All right, Ms. Annis, if you want to ask your question, you can go ahead.
First of all, thanks to the Rochester Riders for hosting this. I think this is a fabulous forum that we need to keep having these to make sure that we cast a wider net in the greater Rochester community so that we let people know what you guys are up to, because I think it's really an important initiative. And to Executive Coulter's point, Doug, when you run, you will hear an earful from people about why they're either for or against public transportation in the greater Rochester community. And I will say it was a mixed bag what I heard. I heard from a family very similar to yours, Doug, that they had children with special needs. They had 2 children, actually adult children, who could not get to their jobs beyond the borders of the greater Rochester area because there was no public transit available to them. So this is a need for families in a really critical way. But the other thing that's interesting is I also had conversations with citizens that they didn't want to see their tax dollars going towards something that they would not be using. But I was able to have a really thoughtful and actually, I think, impactful conversation with a voter about the fact that, this may not impact you directly, but what about your neighbor who needs public transportation to get to their job, to be a viable citizen in this community and to pay their taxes? So, Dave, what you were talking about and alluding to with not having the campaign that we needed to have to talk about the emotional aspect of what having public transportation could do to the citizens in our area, I really think that is a key thing. But my question in the chat was specifically about addressing the issue of the dreaded last mile.
Yes.
That is the argument that folks have that, especially in a commuter community like Greater Rochester, how is this going to benefit someone, in that last mile, because they can't get from wherever the bus stop is to their home because of that last mile. So I really think that's the other issue we have to start addressing to kind of expand people's thinking about what the possibilities could be. So I'll take the answer offline. But again, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
Well, thank you, Barb. And yeah, transit planners like Neil and others have been trying to solve the last mile problem for a long time, and we're making it. We have to figure that out. I don't know how many of you saw, but SMART has now initiated a service, kind of a last mile service. They're starting with Troy because they feel like there might be enough mass there in terms of with the malls and the businesses there. So we're sort of starting with an experiment in Troy with a kind of a last mile service, so that when you do get to your transit stop, there will be a smart bus, one of the smaller smart buses that can take you that last mile. Neil and others can tell you a lot of other examples of how we do that, but Barb, to your point, that's a great point, and that gets brought up, especially in more rural areas all the time where the density isn't there. How do we tackle that last mile? And that has to be a part of the plan as well, no question.
All right, so I see a lot of good questions in the chat here. I do see some of you guys have your hands raised. I'm going to try to keep things in order that they were asked. So I'm going to move to a few of the chat questions here. So next up, we will have, I believe we had a question from Brother Tom. If you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
All right, can you hear me now?
We got you now, Tom. Good to see you.
Hi, Dave. Good to see you too. Good vote for you in November.
Thank you.
So we'll forget about the primary last year. All right.
I'm looking forward, Tom. Always forward.
I'm in your
We got a
corner.
lot of good work to do.
I'm in your corner. One thing I have been thinking about in some of these areas that don't have service right now, if perhaps a park and ride option can be put into some of these cities, for people that the park and ride, the buses would come to those areas of park and ride and pick up people to bring them into the cities.
Yes.
I have a second part of the question.
Yeah, and that's certainly one of those last mile kinds of potential solutions. I noticed someone also said, the bike shares can be a solution, certainly. So there's a lot of, there's a number of opportunities, and the more that these things grow in Metro Detroit, the more that, this car country gets used to these, I think the more acceptable these kinds of last mile alternatives are to people. The bike share program that's now in 5 different communities in Southeast Oakland County has been tremendously well received. So this kind of use of these things is growing, and I think will be part of the solution. Yeah, you had a second question, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, my second question is not so much a question as a statement, and that is there's an underlying cause in the room that nobody dares to talk about why some areas do not want buses, and that's racially motivated.
Yes.
And we have to be conscious of that too, but that's part of the issue.
I don't disagree. I agree with you. I mean, let's face it, the racial issues in Metro Detroit have been with us for a very long time, and they play a part in a lot of the challenges that we have here. And, I don't know what was in Brooks Patterson's heart, and I'm not going to guess, but I know that a lot of folks back in the day when I was young, part of the argument was we don't need folks in Detroit coming up here. We don't go down there anymore. I don't want to go to Detroit. We don't want them to come here. We don't need it. But I honestly believe that even though we are not where we need to be in terms of race, we're in a very different place than we were 25 or 30 years ago. I really believe that, especially our younger people. They love going to Detroit. They want to be there. They want to work there. They want to live there. They want to come back and see their folks up here. And folks here are better around racial issues. Not great, not perfect, not where we need to be. But I think that Metro Detroit has made progress in that regard. So yes, I totally agree with you. I think it was probably a bigger part of the argument in the past than it is now, but we shouldn't be naive enough to think that there isn't a component to that even still, unfortunately.
All right, then we'll move on to Mary Jo next. Mary Jo, if you wanted to unmute and ask your question.
Yes. Hi, thanks, Dave, for being here. And thanks to the organizers. I'm wondering, what do we need to do to get in line for some of the infrastructure money that's been approved at the federal level for transit?
Well, let me tell you, there's a boatload of money coming. There's a significant amount of money that's already been approved under the American Recovery Plan. And then if they get the infrastructure plan passed that they're talking about, and members of Congress tell me that'll probably happen, there's going to be a significant amount of federal monies available. But here's the thing. There has been in the past.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Barb can't hear me very well. Can people hear me okay? Okay. There have been monies in the past. One of the reasons we had to form the RTA and create the governance structure is because it's that structure that can apply for the federal funds. So people talk about, oh, transit is expensive. I got news for you. If we put the right plan together, yes, we'll have to pay a portion of it, but the federal government will pay a large portion of it, just like they are now in other communities. Our tax dollars now are going to Washington, and then they're going to New York and California and Indianapolis and Cleveland to invest in transit, because we don't have a governing structure and a transit plan here. So we need the plan first. So I think that is just another reason why we have to keep at this. We have to keep working at this, because these monies, significant monies, are going to be available, and we can leverage those dollars. So the first thing is the governance structure, and I think we can use the current one that we have, the Regional Transit Authority, and put the plan together, and then we can go after those federal dollars. They're only going to increase.
All right, next we have Kara. If you want to ask your question, go ahead.
Okay, hi. So as mentioned in your presentation, carbon neutrality is really important, and
Yes.
having more people using public transit will allow a huge reduction in cars on the road. My question really is, how do we get more people who may have cars or who may be interested in riding public transit to be more comfortable doing it? Because I've only rid public transit in like Chicago, so I'm almost a little intimidated. Right. You know what I'm saying? To how do I figure out the map, and
yeah,
make it easy? Like, it almost looks like you need to be kind of like a geo expert sometimes, but I'm sure it's just because of lack of knowledge. So
yeah. Well, Kira, that's a great point, and it's kind of what I meant when I said it's hard to use transportation here. It's intimidating, it's confusing, it's not convenient, it's not frequent enough. So there's a lot of things I think we can do. Those are kind of the details around. First of all, I think the first thing is to make the routes more buses on the route. So make it more frequent, because man, if you miss your connection, now it could be another 45 minutes, even though the last bus took you 45 minutes. So more frequent routes, but also, transit stops that are friendlier. You go to other communities, there's an electronic sign there that tells you how far away that bus is and when the next one's coming, and gives you better information on how you make a transfer. There's lots of ways to make it friendlier. We just haven't invested in those things, frankly. But it starts with a clean, frequent, reliable, friendly, Wi-Fi. You can put your bike on the front. That was a great thing, I think, but just making it easier and more customer rider friendly to use is really important. But we haven't done nearly enough investing in that. So it tends to intimidate people like you and me, who say, I don't know how to get to the next stop, and I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait there, or if I'm going to miss my meeting or be late for my job. So, but that, I think that's solvable. I really do. I think we can invest in the kinds of things that just make it, educationally, to make it easier.
Yeah, I think that's what will really help the push to get more people in counties that aren't participating, that, oh, we're not afraid of it anymore. We can use it. They see the benefit for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. I think it's a great point. Thank you.
All right, and then really quick, I'm gonna have Matt give his question so he has time to. Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Berard. I am running for Rochester Hills City Council as a member at large, and I just wanted to introduce myself and ask a question to Executive Coulter. Executive Coulter, thank you for being on. Appreciate it. I kind of going back to something you said earlier. There is a healthy amount of pushback in the Rochester area about mass transit, and I think some of those hesitations are twofold: a manner of scope and a manner, or and then a question of manner or method. And I think some of the hesitation is that residents of Rochester Hills don't want the large city buses rumbling down the streets of their quiet community. My question is really kind of twofold. It's more of a hybrid question and a comment. Is there any data, or have there been any surveys specifically done in the Rochester Hills area that could help inform the debate about the ridership and why it would be a good investment in the Rochester area specifically? And the comment aspect of this is, I think we are on the cusp of a massive technological advancement with autonomous vehicles. And I'm wondering if it might serve us to really shoot for being ahead of the curve, in the sense that we're evaluating whether microtransit of autonomous shuttles, which may be prolific in the next 10 years, would be a good focus for this debate. Again, to suggest that we're not trying to impose city buses on your quiet side streets, but we're looking at transit in more technologically advanced ways. So I know that's a long-winded question, but
yeah,
that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, congratulations on running for office.
Thank you.
A couple of things that I would say. I don't know. I mean, Neil may know, or even Corey, or some of the other transit specialists may know if there's been any research done in Rochester specific. But there's a lot of data about the benefits of transit, the economic benefits, the benefits to the community, the benefits to the residents. And I would invite you, Neil, I'm going to put you on the spot again, because Neil works for Oakland County. He can't be political. And so we're not taking a side in that. But I think if you reached out and maybe shared email, he could give you sort of there's a lot of data out there about what transit does in a community. And you can find a comparable community to Rochester. So I think you'll see a lot of data like that. So that's number one. Number two, this notion of autonomous vehicles, and I even hear about Uber and the like, and these things are all they are the future of transportation in some ways, but they're not a replacement for transit. A self-driving car is just a car that you don't have to drive, but it's still a car, right? It doesn't, and the same thing for Uber. It doesn't address the issue of getting a large amount of people to their destination economically, safely. There's still an expense to those that is cost prohibitive to so many people. And so, but I don't look at it as a competition either. I think that the transit modes of today and tomorrow are going to change. So it's this whole notion of complete streets. So sure, autonomous vehicles and your Ubers and Lyfts of the world, but also your bicycles and it's complete transit options. And so it's just making sure we remember that the public transit option needs to continue. I believe continue to need to be part of that equation. It doesn't need to be a competition, in my opinion. So arm yourself with those facts. And then I want to also say this. I said Neil can't be political, but I can, because I'm a politician. I think that a community like Rochester is right on the cusp. There's enough momentum building, and maybe Melanie and Barb can speak to this again, just because they ran in this community last year. But I think there's a shift going on of people who understand the values here. And I will tell you that from my perspective, I've had conversations with your mayor, and he's very interesting because he's not anti, right? But he'll throw up some of the obstacles. And I think it's because he's smart enough politically to know that there's a building momentum for this. And he wants to figure out how to be on the right side of this and bring this forward in a way that's defensible. So I would encourage you to speak up at your councils. I think you're making a difference. I think that you're changing the conversation in this community. And I see Melanie and Barb shaking their head. So I'm going to assume that means, in fact, if you don't mind, Corey, if I could just ask Melanie, because, you know, she and I knocked doors in Rochester last fall. She talked to a lot of voters, and my sense, and I think the sense of political people, is that the environment is changing there. Would you agree with that? And if you don't know, Melanie Hartman, she ran for county commissioner, lost in a very close race, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah. But what's your sense of that, Melanie? Because I think that opposition is changing and shifting.
I do too. I think, and Barb, we can let her speak also. Rochester and Rochester Hills are on the cusp of change here. I think we're sort of a purple area, red, but we're going to purple, and people, we have younger people moving into the community, and different types of people, different cultures, and they want change. There's a lot of people that want change in our area. So I think this is something that the area, there was a study done, a company brought in to look at this for the Rochester Hills City Council. And this company also noted that there is a great need, a great interest in this in our area. So I think we need to get the work out, which the Rochester Riders, that's what we're working on right now. Educate our community and get the word out. And we'll see what happens with the county, but we would love to get this on the ballot for 2022. And I just want to thank you, Dave, for joining us tonight. Dave is our fabulous county executive and my friend, and he's been leading our county through unprecedented times and doing a wonderful, wonderful job. So just want to do a shout out there to him.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Back at you.
Thank you.
All right, so looking at the time, I know we are past 7 o'clock now, so there's been a lot of good discussion tonight. I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and move into our closing comments. I know we didn't get to everybody's questions. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime. We can schedule another meeting in the future, I would hope. If anybody has any questions for us before moving to our closing comments here, you can contact us on our website through rochesterriders.org. You can send me or Tom an email. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat. Tom, if you want to, you can put yours in as well. And then, yeah, so I believe both Dr. Hartman and Neil might have had some closing comments they wanted to give to us. So I will go ahead and turn it over to them.
Neil, I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. This has been really, really insightful and really encouraging. Just to remember that there is interest in transit from places that maybe haven't traditionally been supportive, and that's okay. And as things change, and I want to point out, it's not necessarily a partisan issue. I mean, transit is very much a human issue, an issue of where we all live, regardless of our affiliations or motivations or how we vote. So there's really, really something in this for everyone. And I put this in the chat twice, actually, but I think it's worth saying. The greatest obstacle, in getting transit to happen isn't really opposition as much as it's just people not being familiar. We in this metropolitan area have not traditionally had a strong, culture of transit usage. So it's easy for a lot of assumptions to kind of take shape about why or how people don't want it. Some of them are valid, some of them are accurate, but some of them are just that, they're assumptions. So in making sure that that we kind of turn over a new leaf here, and this is where I really, my hats are off to what you're doing here, to really do more listening first before we talk. And that's coming from someone who likes to talk. To really get out there and hear what are some of the misconceptions, what are the questions, what's on people's minds about transit, and how do we kind of hear those things and maybe learn from some of the mistakes of previous attempts, and whatever we do going forward, whether that's next year or whenever, that we really learn from what our neighbors are saying, from what our elected officials are saying, and from what we didn't do right in the last 2 or 3 or 35 times of trying this. As Executive Coulter stated, and I would certainly agree with, the campaign the last couple times we've tried to do bigger transit things hasn't been so great. And it's not a question of just saying, oh, we were so close, let's do it again. I disagree. I think there's a lot of takeaways from that that we can really learn from. So it's great to be working with the executive team to really try and I guess I'll say operationalize some of these concepts to move forward. Of course, it's very political. There'll be a lot of door knocking, a lot of community level things to do, which is where groups like Rochester Riders are invaluable, because not just all politics is local, all matters of transit and resource and public expenditure are local. But as you all really focus on that locally, how can we start to review some of the underpinnings to move this forward with input from all angles, hearing all diverse ideas on this, and they're all over the place. Everyone's input is valid, even people who maybe don't support transit. We need to hear them out too, and people who do support transit, obviously music to my ears, but we gotta bring everyone in on this. So that's what we're working on, and we hope to have some substance very, very soon, and really encouraged to see conversations like this north of South Boulevard. So thank you very much. I look forward to riding the bus with y'all.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for joining tonight and for your comments. And thank you to everybody who's joined. We're just absolutely thrilled with the turnout, and we hope that you will join us. We have meetings every Sunday evening. If you can just get on once in a while, they're at 6 p.m. right now, but we're going to be moving to 7 p.m. And hopefully you'll get out there and talk to your friends about this, get the word out there. And I'm making a personal plea to dig into your pockets and make a donation to the group. We would really appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I think Corey has a few other things.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hartman. And yeah, so our next meeting for Rochester Riders is going to be this Sunday at 6 p.m. It's going to be on Sunday, the 25th. Starting in May, we're going to have that discussion about moving it back to 7 o'clock for people's convenience. But right now it's at 6 p.m. So Sunday, the 25th is our next group meeting. And yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This was great. This was a really fun event for us to do. We're happy with how the turnout came out. So many people were on this call. I wanted to thank our partners specifically for helping us promote and set this up. Thanks to Megan from Transportation Riders United. She's still on the call. Thank you so much. Thanks to Motor City Freedom Riders. Idris, to see you here. Thank you for helping us promote. And thanks to Andrew and everybody else with the Oakland County Climate Campaign. You guys are, all three of these organizations have been helping us out and working alongside us. They share a lot of our common goals, and we're really excited that they can help us promote this and push further on. So thank you to everybody. And thank you to everybody who showed up. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. It was really, really great. Yeah, Tom, do you have any final closing comments?
I just have one final closing thing. So, and this is awesome meeting. I'm so glad to see everybody here. Just real quick about donating. So I posted the link to the donate page, and there's just one thing you should know. So we do work with Motor City Freedom Riders pretty closely. We're kind of established as an independent branch of that organization, and I suggest that you all check out Motor City Freedom Riders when you get a chance. But to donate, just make sure that there's a drop down menu that, and if you want your donation to go specifically to the Rochester Riders Fund, select Rochester Riders. And we will use those donations to move our campaign forward. You know, we need to print campaign materials. We'll be spending it on things that help us move this campaign forward. So I encourage everybody to do that. And Corey, I know you're recording this. Are you going to send the recording out, or?
Yeah, I'm going to set up a YouTube channel for us, and I'm going to put the recording up there in a day or two. So yeah, it'll be available for everybody to see who might have had to come in later, or if anybody who left early, we're going to have the recording up for people to go back and watch.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, everybody. And thank you for coming, Executive Coulter.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Coulter. All right, have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody.